Stay connected with the latest news across your world. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
Alrighty then, a quarter of an hour to midnight. Let's change tack a bit, change gears. You'll see what I did in a second there. So you'll recall, I mean, it would be probably around maybe the 90s or the noughties. I'm not quite sure when it was. But then you started to see our roads now, suddenly all these cars and this marks and this brand of cars that we hadn't been seeing before, we started to see more of. This is as we saw Korean brands like Kia, Hyundai, and even at a time, remember there was a brand called Daewoo? Well, they went on to take South Africa by storm. I mean, Hyundai is such a well-established brand here like that. And they went on to challenge the mass volume players like Toyota, Volkswagen, Nissan, and so on, and all the other Japanese marks and German marks and so on. These brands not only stole or carved out a significant market share, but also won the hearts of South Africans with their affordability, innovation, and reliability. Fast forward now to the 2000s. Today, a similar story is unfolding, but this time it's with the Chinese automotive brands that are rapidly making their mark in South Africa. And there are quite a number of them. These are the Great Wall Motor Company, or GWM, as they go with. There is GAC, Jet2, there's a number of them. Let's find out more. Motoring journalist Kumirai Chagazi joining us on the line. Shamor. Kumirai? Kumirai. What's happening with Kumirai's line? Okay, let's put you back. Okay, he can probably hear me, but I can't hear him. Let's put him back and let's see if we can get him back. So we're talking about the rise of the Chinese automotive brands. I know Pokela was enamored. I haven't seen Pokes in a while. He's probably bought himself one by now because he was enamored. He loves these Chinese cars. He's so done with these German brands that are just hella expensive. But when you look at these cars are they look good. Make no mistake about it. The Chinese, those cars look good. But in terms of what's under the skin, I don't know. That's what we've got Kumbirai Mchagazi to tell us about. Kumbirai, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, TT.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. And thank you so much for your patience as well. We were overrunning tonight. One thing leads to another knock-on effect. And now we have to keep you up until midnight. I do apologize for that.
Listen, man, anytime. I mean, you're a legend there, so I completely understand.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate your graciousness on this one. Listen, let's talk about this. First of all, Kubirai, how many of these marks are there? It's just, I can't even keep track of how many of these Chinese marks are on the road now.
Jeez, man, I think, and you are still not going to be able to keep up with them anytime soon because each and every month there is essentially a new brand that keeps on tapping into the South African market and into Africa, really. And I think they've realized that this is where it's at the moment. And I don't blame them, really. I think they're providing consumers with such, great vehicles. And also, I mean, Pocket right now, I think the vehicle market is easily just price itself out for the regular consumer.
Absolutely.
So I think right now we're going to be seeing a lot of the Chinese brands coming in.
Let's talk about, I mean, you talk price. I mean, everything's about price. Even when the likes of Hyundai came onto the market, the Kias, it is they made inroads because they were coming with a decent product offering, but at so much less than the established marks. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest thing. Price. And I think people, our market, unfortunately, and you know what, it's everybody wants to save more bucks in their pocket at the end of the day.
Of course.
So when Hyundai, when Kia approached the market as well, great offering. Somebody wants something that looks really good. If I'm so used to having a BMW or Mercedes-Benz or any of the other legacy brands and that are attracting because of this certain appeal, I need to at least go into somewhat, whether it's a Korean brand or a Chinese brand, still needs to give me that, but at a less price. And I think we've seen Hyundai and Kia doing that. But my worry, though, is that, I don't know how long they're going to keep that up because, as we noticed with Hyundai and Kia, when they came into the market, they were very affordable. But as we look at now, I think it's been over 20 or 21 years since Hyundai and Kia really established the market. Now we're looking at a Kia and a Hyundai for over R1 million. So
madness.
also
How did we get here?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're still to see that with the Chinese, but right now we will take what they are giving us.
Now their pricing of these Chinese brands here, and why they are coming in at as affordable as they are, is that or competitively priced as they are? Is that a function purely of the Chinese and manufacturing industry and the fact that they can push out such volumes, at for so much less, or is it actually concealing something that is, how we were disparaging in the past about China, anything Chinese or Hong Kong, we used to even call it, disparagingly, that it was an inferior quality. What, just break it down for me there. What is the offering here?
It definitely has to go with the former of what you said, TT, and I don't think that, as much as we've, a lot of people, we've kind of been brainwashed into thinking, China is just Hong Kong, essentially, like you mentioned. But the Chinese have proven that their products are really quite strong. I mean, they're putting the money where their mouth is. I mean, brands like Chery have come out to say, listen, we'll give you a 1,000,000-kilometer warranty. To be honest with
insane.
That is, yes, it is only viable for the first owner, but I mean, a 1,000,000-kilometer warranty is just saying, listen, we completely understand that you might not trust our product, but here is where we are. I mean, brands like Chery and I mentioned Jetor, Haval, they've developed, their facilities in South Africa now where they're keeping millions worth of, parts and, service kits and all these things that should something happen, they don't want an issue where there was a certain, brand, a French brand that had issues where, you get in a slight fender bender or you take your car for a service and something is wrong and it would take months to get the parts into the country. The Chinese have gone against that and they've set up all these manufacturing hubs in here where they keep their parts in the country so that should something happen, you immediately have great turnaround time in terms of the parts, and also the dealer network is now continuously increasing. And I mean, you look at some dealers, some well-established dealerships that are closing down in places of these Chinese dealerships. So wherever you go, there is always a, whether it's a Chery, a GWM, a BYD, etc. They're all coming to make sure that we set up shop and people do not worry about, after-sale service. There isn't any parts lacking. And I mean, in terms of quality, like I mentioned earlier on, they are putting the money where their mouth is. So I think it's only a matter of time, really, till we see the likes of BYD fully establishing shop into the country, the likes of GWM. I think once they do develop a plant in the country, I think that would further back up and even give us value for money products and less than importing the products.
So it is the real deal then. They are as good as they look. I mean, I've got to say as well, they are making very good looking cars. They look a lot like other cars I see on the road, but they look like a version of other things I've seen on the road. And that was another thing. When they first came onto the market, these Chinese marks, you remember they had a bit of a reputation, of course, and it's been a big problem in China that intellectual property thieves of note. I mean, I remember they produced this thing that looked like a Range Rover. Exactly like a Range Rover.
So, TT, when it comes to that, really, and I'm going to make it quite easy, and this is what most of the people don't know, actually. And I know, you're talking about it looked like a Range Rover. Now, that group, which came out with a car that looks like a Range Rover,
they now own Range Rover.
Yeah, so they have a working agreement, if I can put it that way.
Okay.
Where they will make some cars for Range Rover or develop some batteries for electric vehicles, and in return they can get some design cues and they can get some parts. Essentially, I mean, you look at I'll go for just bringing it so that people can actually get an idea. I'll go for Chery.
Yeah.
For Cherry, for example, you'll see your starter button in a Cherry looks like a Mercedes-Benz. The seats in there look like a
Yes.
Mercedes-Benz as
Yes.
well. And that's just because there's a working agreement with Mercedes-Benz where they can share some, some, whether it's intellectual property or whether it's actual parts for certain things, and Mercedes-Benz in turn as well will do the same. So obviously because, people regard Mercedes as this, the greatest in the world, or, we are just so wired that way that when we see this in the likes of these Chinese brands, we think they're automatically copying. But there is always these working relationships. I mean, the
Oh.
same way you mentioned with, Range Rover
Yeah.
and now JQ, there is that working partnership that they're currently doing. So that is why we're seeing most of these, cars that look like some other brands. But also the other thing is that these Chinese brands, TT, have been poaching most of these designers from those, brands. I
Ah.
mean, you look at there's a brand right now, just that's BYD rather. The designer there is from Porsche, so you'll see some of the design cues that you'll see on those cars as well, looking like a Porsche. And that's because the designer that was there is now at this Chinese brand. So that is essentially where we're going.
Wow, listen, I'm actually, this makes me happy, because as I said, these cars look good and they're competitively priced. So I think it's just a change of mindset that's required here. I mean, what's going on under the bonnet, though, Kumbirai?
Yeah, so under the bonnet is where I think they still have a lot of work to do. To be honest with you, there are a lot of these 1.5-liter engines that they're bringing into the country. I mean, you can't go to any Chinese brand and not find a 1.5-liter engine. It's essentially their thing that they're giving. The other thing, it's literally a
What is this?
copy
This
and paste.
what are we? What is this? 1995, 1.5. Come on.
Geez, and it's completely frustrating, especially myself as a motoring, content creator and journalist. When I do drive, you put your foot down in a car like that, and the throttle modulation is still to be, they still need to perfect that, especially for our markets. The fuel consumption is another thing where, sure, you are saving money on the purchase of this car, but essentially you're going to be spending more money
Oh
in terms
my
of fuel
goodness.
consumption in some of these cars. And there are brands that are really starting to wake up, and brands that are taking what South Africans are actually saying, listen, your cars are way too high in terms of fuel consumption. And now they're bringing in some, hybrid options of those cars. And I mean, I had a JQ recently on test, and that fuel consumption coming was exceptional. So there are brands that are listening, and there are brands that are just strictly we'll give, this is what we have, and we're not going to do anything about it. And for me, that throttle modulation where, you step on the accelerator, TT, and the car thinks, wait, are we going forward? Are we not? Oh, we are going forward. And then it decides to jolt forward. So that's
So it's still got the turbo lag is still a thing there.
100%.
Oh my
100%.
goodness.
We've got turbo lags and, all these throttle mapping issues.
Yeah.
And so I think once they get those right, then you've got a full 100% deal. I mean, no car is perfect. Not even the Germans are perfect at times, but that for me is the biggest thing that we have, especially under the bonnet.
So, but it seems like their niche, if you can call it a niche, is these EVs. Is that's where that's where they're kicking ass. But I'm not sure whether I don't think they've really started bringing those into the country yet.
So in terms of EVs, there is Chinese brands that have brought in EVs. We're looking at, the biggest EV automaker in the world, really, which is BYD, and which overtook Tesla a long time ago. They've brought in their EV into the country. They've got the current cheapest EV in the country, which costs about 560,000 rand.
Wow.
And, before that, it was GWM, which had brought in one of the EVs, which was the GWM Aura. And at the time, it was, one of the cheapest EV at 700,000 rand. So now look at the difference between, 2 years ago, the cheapest EV was 700,000 rand. Now, BYD is coming in at 500, I think 560 maximum for the BYD Dolphin. And we've already seen some of their EVs and plug-in hybrid options that they're bringing in, like, the likes of the Bucky right now, the BYD Shark. I'm sure you've seen it all over social media. And, taking over the likes of the Raptor. And there's so many orders already on those Buckies.
Wow.
So once BYD, I know they recently opened a dealer in Cape Town where there was a previous Volvo dealership essentially taking over that dealership. And they've already garnered over 450 orders in terms of some of their Buckies and their electric models. So I think the pricing plays a massive role, whereas, the Germans, the Koreans, etc., find find it quite tough in terms of pricing their EVs,
Yeah.
especially because of that import tax. There's EV tax as always. The government is not really playing ball in terms of trying to say, listen, if you get an EV, you get a discount. But right now, we're paying quite a lot of money because of that EV tax that we
Okay.
have, which is I think almost 20% of your total price. So now, I mentioned 560,000 in terms of EV, the cheapest EV. Now take out 20% of that EV tax, TT, and you'll essentially get a really cheaper EV.
I got
So
you.
I
Yeah.
think, I think that's what we currently playing with. But we are seeing a lot of EVs coming in from the Chinese as well.
All right. Your parting shot then. So what are you saying? I've never been an early adopter of anything. I mean, I was one of the last of the Mohicans on a BlackBerry. So it's gonna take me a while to get it to a Chinese mark. But what is your message in as far as they're concerned? Should we be side eyeing them or should we be taking a closer look?
You should definitely take a closer look, TT. I think it's going to be very interesting, and I think other brands, especially as well, need to be very, very careful in terms of how they're pricing their cars in South Africa. Otherwise, we're going to be seeing an influx of Chinese vehicles and some of these brands being pushed out, and some of these legacy brands that I mentioned earlier on are going to be pushed out. And I think for me, then for the government, they need to now bring in a Chinese automaker to say, listen, we are seeing what you're doing in the market. You need to set up a manufacturing plant in South Africa. That way, because we've got Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, Ford, Toyota, we've got manufacturing plants in South Africa. And with everybody going Chinese, this might just lead to deindustrialization where, some of these brands are forced to close down their plants in South Africa.
Yep.
And that's the bigger thing that, that is where the government now needs to also be early adopters and not be like UTT. So that, so that should, some of these brands now start closing down their plants, we know that some the Chinese brands can set up shop down here and employ some of those people. Because I look at the likes of BMW, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling now, but I looked at the like of BMW plant in Rosslyn, which employs over 50,000 people.
Sure.
Now think about, should they close that plant?
Disaster.
What's going to happen with all those people?
Yeah.
Nissan Rosslyn have already came out, to say they might close that plant already, and Global is already doing that. So I think we can adopt. It's great that they're coming in with great pricing for the economy. It's helping the economy, but help the economy entirely by setting up shop here.
Awesome. Kumbirai, thank you so much, my man. It's been nice. It's been great chatting to you, and thanks again, man, for your patience and indulgence. We'll chat again soon. Oh, but a quick one. Here you go. A quick plug there for your content. Where can people check it out?
You can find me on @KumbiRaiM on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, everywhere really @KumbiRaiM. Kumbi M on cars.
Dr. Shamwar.
Thank you, Mdara.
Thank you.